Hello everyone and welcome back to Animation Pilgrimage, the show where Tennille and myself take a look at every single theatrically released animated film in chronological order. I'm Sean.
I'm Tennille, but Sean, we're not covering films today.
No, we're taking a look at the wide world of television animated shows.
TV.
It's a movie theater in your home. That's not true at all. It's the 70s, and we're going to look at a small handful of what are some of the most popular shows from all of the 70s. This is by no means an accurate or wholly cohesive list.
Cohesive, yeah, that's the word I would use.
It does not cover every smidgen of animated shows. There's probably things we did not talk about on this list.
Yeah.
Specifically in areas that are not America or Japan.
Yeah.
But we're going off of what we know. And hey, we're going to change how this works going forward. So keep an eye on how that's going to work. But this is the 70s and we're talking about 6 different shows.
Mm-hmm. Well, and before we get started, I want to say up front that this is absolutely going to be an episode where fans of these series are going to be way more knowledgeable than we are.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Just on a base level, because there's just way too much to cover, and I feel like to even scratch the surface of this, like, we would have had to watch a lot more. And we only watched, like, 2 or 3 episodes of each of these just to get a general idea of what it's about and refresh our memory on, like what the show looks like. So this is going to be a very, base covering of what 70s TV was like, giving you some basic information about those TV shows, and then just kind of reflecting on what animation was like on TV in the 70s.
Yeah, so this is by no means going to be the best look at it, but you know what? That's not the basis of what this show is. We just want to give you some cliff notes.
Exactly.
So, starting off, we're in 1969. Wait, this is the 70s, right? It's Scooby-Doo! Where are you? Because we didn't talk about it before because it was, let's be honest, a lot of 70s animated shows were reruns of things that had come before. Not fully.
Well, okay, no. Hold on.
Okay.
We're covering Scooby-Doo in the 70s because Scooby-Doo is the epitome of 70s TV.
Yes.
Like,
even
at
though
least
it did not
children's animated shows in the 70s, even though it started in 69. Like, we covered 60s TV shows. Scooby-Doo was nothing like them. I mean, it was, but like, this is such an obvious step forward. And actually, the last show that we're covering on today's list, I almost feel like we should have done the same for pushing it over into the 80s, because it has a very 80s feel to it.
It's very true, but because we're changing how we're covering television going forward...
We're covering it now.
Yeah. And we'll talk about it when we get to that last one. But this is Scooby-Doo!
Where are you?
Where are you? Like Zoink Scoob! Who doesn't know what Scooby-Doo is? I mean, most people do, but it's the mystery gang. It's Scooby, Shaggy, Velma, Irene, and Jock Boy.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Daphne and Fred, that's what I said.
I think I misheard you. Play that back.
Irene and Jock Boy.
Okay.
Yep.
Alright. So
they solve mysteries and it's always a dude in a suit and hijinks ensue. And the premise is bad guys dress in costume to get away with something. And the bad guy is always someone you're introduced to. And usually it's pretty obvious because there's like no one else introduced in the episode.
Yeah.
But the leaps of logic that the mystery crew come to figure out who done it are either painfully obvious or incomprehensibly impossible to follow. There is no in between.
Yeah, no, there's really not.
We watched 2 different episodes here. What a Night for a Night, where it's a guy in knight armor trying to steal paintings from a museum and make forgeries and swap them out.
Sell them, yeah.
And the other one was Jeepers, It's the Creeper. We just kind of watched a couple random episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a very episodic show, it doesn't matter what we watch. And it's about a owner of a bank who's been stealing money from his bank. But you don't know any of this until the end because a security camera that printed on a specific kind of paper that you have to use a light behind it or something to make it come out. They're fighting over, it's this weird guy in a creeper costume trying to get this piece of paper while the kids are at a farm.
Well, they're having a school dance.
A school dance in the farm because, you know, that's how you do in the 70s.
The ending conflict resolution and the rest of the episode just have nothing to do with each other.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like, it's not some sort of farm heist. It's a bank thing, but they spend the whole time on a farm.
Yeah.
Also, that episode has, like, a small chick that hatches and thinks that Scooby-Doo is its mom and starts acting like a dog.
Yeah.
I don't know, the budget is generally pretty low on these. Common aspects are looping backgrounds as they'd use the same stock run cycle over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
It's low budget
mystery
and laugh track.
Oh God, the laugh track. Why? Why is there a laugh track? I know it was a thing that people did in this time, but like, oh, it just ruins comedy. Like, even if I don't think any of these jokes in this show are funny to begin with, because they're not really, the addition of a laugh track just sours my mood so completely. I cannot take any of it seriously. However, I did try to, pull some positives from this a bit. I do really like the backgrounds that were done in the first episode, but then I noticed that the backgrounds were, like, just not as well done, not as finished in the second episode we watched. And that could very easily just be, like, a degradation over time. That could be different, background artists. They maybe don't have the same background artists that, started the show. I don't know. But, like, the background art for the first episode was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, the other one we watched just was really basic.
Yeah. Yeah, and this show was horrendously popular.
Okay, you want to talk about the creation of the show, though?
Yes, please, fill us in on the background of Scooby-Doo and what it spawned.
Okay, so... originally, Scooby-Doo was a show that Hanna-Barbera was going to produce because around the time of the late 60s, parents got together as a group, so you can already tell this is going well, and they were upset that there was too much violence in cartoons being shown on TV.
Uh-huh.
So they formed ACT, or ACT, which is like Actions for Children's Television or something like that.
Okay.
And they wanted to see less violence. So in response to that, Hanna-Barbera wanted to start pumping out a bunch of shows that would fit these new standards.
Yeah, so they flooded the market with a bunch of clones of their own shows. And
hold on, we're not there. I mean, they already did that kind of thing.
Because it's Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah, you already have, all their other clone shows like Flintstones, Jetsons, and then, like, any Huckleberry Hound.
Magilla Gorilla, Top Cat, 17 other characters not named here that are all the
exact same thing, but with a different coat of paint, yes.
Yeah.
So, Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Was pitched as a rock band group solving mysteries.
Rock band.
Or not like a rock, but like a musical group.
Okay.
Like a band.
Mm-hmm.
Solving mysteries. And they would be like a mystery music gang.
Yes.
And this was inspired by like a whole bunch of other things that were already popular around the same time. Like Hardy Boys. Just that there was already a bunch of other stuff like this.
Oh, I believe it.
Archie.
Yes. Okay, yep.
I think this show was originally pitched as like an Archie clone. And then, like, eventually they just kept taking it to, like, their distributor, and the distributor or executive producer or whatever kept being like, nah. And they just kept changing, like, one little element here or there.
Each time?
Yeah, and then finally...
Okay, this time they're not a rock group. They're just a bunch of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a dog now.
And the dog was originally a copy of, like, some other dog they had in one of their other shows. And then they're like, well, what about Marmaduke? Let's make it like Marmaduke.
So they made it a Great Dane.
So they made it a Great Dane. And, like, it was a sheepdog at some point, and his name was called Too Much, apparently.
That's too much, man.
Yeah. And then they supposedly, according to stories, ended up giving Scooby-Doo his name because... Can you guess where Scooby-Doo's name comes from?
They pulled it out of a hat. They were at the pitch meeting, and they didn't have a name, so they're like, Scooby-Doo-be-Doo. Did I call it? Did I get it?
Well,
is it like jazz music?
Think about what you just said. Scooby-Doo-be-Doo. It's literally supposedly based on like Frank Sinatra's scatting in a song where he's like Scooby-Doo-be-Doo-be-Doo-be-Doo. And so his name's Scooby-Doo.
Okay.
What I do find more interesting is the story apparently behind Scooby-Doo's design, which was done by Iwao Takamoto, who was a Disney artist who worked on like Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, and then left and worked for Hanna-Barbera. He did the character design for Scooby-Doo, and he had a friend who was breeder of Great Danes. And so he asked this friend, like, you know, what are all the, like, correct, good signs of, like, a well-bred Great Dane? And so then his friend told him all these things of what you look for in a good specimen of the breed. And then he just, like, went against them, making Scooby-Doo with, like, a double chin and bow-legged and... like that kind of thing.
The ugly version. Like
right.
A bad mutt version of a
Great Dane. Yeah, which I think is really charming.
That is a very smart way to go about designing a character.
Yeah. And I mean, Scooby-Doo has a great design.
It's true. It's very iconic.
Yeah. And then, of course, like all Hanna-Barbera things, once this became stupidly popular, it spawned a million copycats, most of them made by Hanna-Barbera.
Like, there was so many others, like Josie and the Pussycats, and ones I don't even know the names of.
Because they were that
there was so many.
Uh-huh.
There was so many. It's like you turn on the TV and there's going to be a gang of some number of children and a dog running around solving crimes and mysteries. All produced by Hanna-Barbera. I mean, sometimes Scooby-Doo, sometimes not.
It's so odd that they did these kinds of things because you think that it would just hurt your own market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like they're fighting with themselves, but I guess if they're the only people on television, it doesn't matter.
Well, they're not the only people on television, though. Like we're going to talk about later on, you know, we've got Filmation is probably Hanna-Barbera's biggest competitor.
What about Rankin Bass? Is Rankin Bass making television shows?
Not really.
Okay.
They do more so TV specials, I think.
Okay.
Maybe they did make a few TV shows. I don't know. I haven't looked super into it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't get it.
Mm-hmm. Whatever. I don't want to try to dissect Hanna-Barbera's brains with why they did anything, because it's generally a lot of I'm going to be honest, a lot of dumb schlock that's just there to fill time and have people not think while they watch it.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to talk about how, you know, a lot of times we think of these TV shows as, you know, something inspired, something that was, you know, created because somebody had an idea and they wanted to share it. And like, no, really, a lot of TV shows, even today,
even the ones that are
99% of the time are made because some executive is like,
we need a show.
We have this time slot open. This is what our marketing team says that we want right now. Fill that gap. And then some artists get together and go, okay, well, how can we make something that fits this? How does this sound? No. Okay, well,
like, I like these aspects, change these 7 things and try again. And bring it back next week type of thing.
Right. So, like, a lot of TV shows are not made because somebody feels passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
It is made because there is a product to sell, and that is TV. Especially nowadays, or nowadays, as in here in the 70s, where children's TV is not the marketing powerhouse that it will be in the 80s.
That's because you're not allowed to sell toys yet.
Yeah.
That'll be a thing in the 80s.
Yeah, and like, so they're balancing a weird line of like, well, why are we even making this financially?
Mm-hmm.
Other than, you know, we've got this animation studio and we've got people who are employed, so we may as well be making them do something, you know?
They're fighting over what show gets watched the most. It's all about
it's all about the ratings.
Ratings and stuff, and that gets you more money. I don't honestly know how all of that works.
I guess then, going back to what we were talking about with the copycats, might explain why the copycats were so prevalent and why that stops in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're just trying to make people watch you and you want your ratings up,
just make a bunch of things that are roughly the same thing means they'll get roughly the same product no matter what they watch, and they won't
hopefully that means ratings is up.
Yeah.
But in the 80s, when they start making toys, they won't want to start infringing on other people's brands.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be part of it.
Yeah. Well,
anyway,
all right.
That's just a bunch of guesses on our part. If you know more about this, feel free to leave it in the comments below. I know Scooby-Doo is a very beloved franchise.
And there's a lot of history in it.
Yeah, but I honestly don't know a whole lot other than what I've just said.
Yeah. And, I mean, television animation is not a thing that we've looked into a whole lot. So please, if you know more about any of these shows or other shows that were influential for the time, leave them in the comments below.
Yeah.
Please. So the next thing that we're going to talk about...
Lupin the Third.
Whoa, we've watched 2 movies of this already. But
yeah.
Before those movies came out, there was a show. I mean, okay. So there's a manga created by Monkey Punch.
Mm-hmm.
That's the name used by the creator.
Yeah.
I don't know what their actual name is, but it doesn't matter.
Their pseudonym.
Yeah, their writing pseudonym is Monkey Punch.
Uh-huh.
So Monkey Punch creates Lupin the Third, which is about a dashing, daring thief and his group of friends as they run around and they steal things, and it's based on
Arsène Lupin.
Arsène Lupin, who was a character created to rival Sherlock Holmes when copyright wasn't a thing. So, like, they were literally books written about an antagonist thief to the Sherlock Holmes, and this is supposedly like the great-grandson of that character. And so there are a bunch of other characters that are also descendants of other famous historical figures or myths.
Uh-huh.
So we got, like, Goemon, who is descendant of Goemon, a good samurai dude or whatever. And, like, I think most of the characters are. I honestly don't know if Jigen or Fujiko are. But Zenigata is also, I think, based on a Japanese police officer or detective or something.
PI.
Again, I don't know. If you know more about where the origins of these are, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, this got a short or 2 here or there, And then they decided, you know what? Boom, television show, seems perfect, super episodic. Every episode does something different. And so we watched 2 episodes of the original stint of the show. We watched Is Lupin Burnin', which is the very first episode. And we also watched Lupin Caught in a Trap, which is another random episode. Again, episodic nature, we can watch them mostly wherever we want.
Well, and you've watched a little bit more in your own free time.
Yes. When we first were getting into the 70s, more than a year ago.
You decided to check it out.
Yeah, I decided to check it out, and I really enjoyed parts of it. And I think moving on from the first season would be a good idea if I ever wanted to go back to it, because...
Like starting with season 2?
Part 2, technically, is what...
Part 2.
Yeah, because at this point, the show has 4 parts. Lupin the Third, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4. Each one goes for a number of seasons and then stops, and then it gets picked back up. And instead of retconning everything that happened before and just starting the series over, they literally just continue where they left off, which is a fascinating take on a franchise, because a lot of franchises don't do that. They generally try to retcon everything that happened before so they can redo it all and just tell it slightly differently. Not Lupin the Third. Everything, I would guess most everything is canon. So there's a lot of, like, this is a series that deals with literal magic and aliens and crazy, silly stuff all over the place. Honestly, it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed this show. I don't have, because we've already covered 2 movies, I don't really have much else to say about the show that we haven't mentioned in those previous episodes.
Yeah.
So
I will say he's the show, in the show, he's generally leans more towards the lecherous side
of Lupin.
Lupin, yeah, he's more on the horny boy side.
Horny boy.
And I guess I'll let you know that Part 1 was only like 25 episodes and ran for less than a year. Part 2 started in 1977.
And we watched some of that as well.
And that went for, God, I looked this up before, but it went for like 200 episodes over the course of 4 years, up through 1980. So like, we watched 2 episodes out of that as well. We watched the first episode called The Return of Lupin the Third. And then we watched another one some ways down the line.
Which had a delightful callback.
Yes.
The first episode of the second part.
I want to talk about it in a moment, but the other episode we watched is A Safe Bet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a pun, because he's breaking into a safe.
These episodes were delightful.
Yeah.
I had fun watching this.
Yeah, so the first one, Lupin is racing around a track, but also there's an evil scorpion villain man that they're taking down at the same time. Fujiko gets captured and tickle torture happens because, of course, eventually Lupin electrifies and kills everybody and then continues or proceeds to win the race. Then Zenigata tries to capture him, but doesn't work. Everything explodes. The bad guy dies. It's great.
Oh my god.
Lupin Caught in a Trap. Lupin, Jigen, and Fujiko go clubbing with this random blue-haired gal. Goemon, who is ace as ace can be, does not join them and is not a part of this story whatsoever. Like, they get to the club and he's just like,
No.
And he just leaves. It's great. Turns out, the blue-haired gal got them all really drunk and put explosive watches on them and forces them to do like a money heist. And it turns out Fujiko was in on the whole thing, and at the end, Lupin blows them all up because he made a bunch of fake money, so it doesn't matter anyways.
Right.
And those are the 2 episodes we watched from the first stint. Pretty enjoyable. Once we get to the 1977 reboot, there is a distinctive quality upgrade.
Yeah.
It's like you can tell the show is now has a bigger budget.
Mm-hmm.
The writing is better, the animation's better, the backgrounds are better. Everything about it is just done better. But I mean, it's been like 6 years, so you would hope so.
Right.
And the return of Lupin III is everyone's called to this giant
cruise ship,
which it turns out was made by the Scorpio guy from the first episode.
Uh-huh.
And he's back, and now he's a giant mechanical green man made of metal. Who knows? He spent like $1 billion on this ship just to kill Lupin, which is hilarious because in the first one he spent like $1 million building a whole racetrack just to kill Lupin.
It's pretty creepy actually, because you have, I don't know, it creeps me out particularly because you have a whole bunch of people trapped on this boat, essentially, and they're all getting killed because he's trying to kill Lupin.
Oh, and in the end, everybody dies on this ship, and the main crew does not care.
No.
Lupin, Fujiko, Goemon, Jigen, they don't care. They are a little sad that Zenigata dies, but he didn't die.
Oh, of course not.
He didn't die. Supposedly the bad guy is killed by electrocution again. We've not watched any more past this, but I would love for this guy to come back as like the episode 1 villain for part 3 and part 4 as well.
Oh,
because I
amazing.
think that would be hilarious.
And he just looks like completely different each time.
Oh yeah, and
he
he's like, I tried to kill you. I'm back again. That would be great. And then a safe bet is Lupin just breaks into a famous safe maker's safes and nobody trusts his safe, so he like loses all of his honor and stuff. So
prestige,
so his son challenges him to opening a safe in a bet, and in order to do it, he locks Fujiko up and poisons Lupin.
Yeah.
And then they get to the safe and it's an egg out in the middle of a field. And he's like, you'll never guess it. Just like 1001 Arabian Nights. And it's like, oh, you idiot. The way to open is literally just saying open sesame. Like, he gives it away.
Yeah.
I don't remember specifically what he says, but they get in and everything's fine. And it's like, yeah, you got something to learn, kid. And then Lupin's like, yeah, there's no way in hell I would have ever
been able to crack that.
Or the dad's safe as well, because he never actually really beat the other guy super safe. He just made him think that he had broken into it and let it open by itself at the appointed time.
Uh-huh.
It's like, Lupin's a crafty sumbitch.
He really is. And that's what makes this fun. Even if it has a lot of, like, you know, outdated
sexist flaws here and there.
Right.
Because it's definitely sexist here and there. And there is a big body count in half these episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, people die all the time. And the main characters don't blink. They do not care.
So it's one of those things that I think, because Lupin the Third as a franchise has lasted so long, and, like, has gotten better, like, it's shifted tonally to fit with a more modern audience. Like, it's easier to kind of hand wave away some of the problematic, I guess, stuff about the 70s, because you're like, it's okay, they get better.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I think that's just neat. And like we've talked about the background of Lupin the Third before, so I think we're going to move on to the third show, where we only watched like one episode. 1972 brought us...
Hey, it's Fat Albert!
Fat Albert!
Hey, it's Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids.
I didn't want to talk about this because I don't really want to talk about Bill Cosby, but you know what? We don't really have to talk about Bill Cosby, because the important thing about this show is that it was a show that aired on national television. It had a black cast.
It was made by a black creator, minimum one.
I mean, Bill Cosby was the creator in the sense that he was a famous comedian they could tie a name to. And
have him voice every character.
Yeah, but other than that, it was made by a bunch of white guys.
Oh, of course. And by a bunch of white guys, a bunch of people that were paid next to nothing, because the budget on the show was $0. But hey, black cast, it's a start.
Yeah.
That's the important thing here.
you know, it was a pretty wholesome TV show that
They tried
taught
to teach
kids
morals every episode.
Yeah, and like it shared stories of, you know, Black communities and Black neighborhoods. So like that's great to see. Bill Cosby being a shitty person in retrospect aside.
Mm-hmm. Just kind of ironic that Bill Cosby here is teaching us about lying, and that's a bad thing.
Yeah, the first episode we watched was all about lying, and I'm just like, ugh.
God.
It's weird. I feel like it could just be because of the nostalgia loop, the way that, you know, things come back into popular conscious.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I just don't feel like a lot of these 70s shows, other than, you know, it's hard to explain it now, I guess, because we just talked about Scooby-Doo and Lupin, probably two of the most successful 70s properties of all time. But like, a lot of these other TV shows we're going to talk about, or two of these other TV shows we're going to talk about in Fat Albert, it just doesn't feel like they have the same, like,
Staying
power
Yeah.
as a lot of TV shows that have been around in the 80s, the 90s. And even from the 60s, you know, you had the Flintstones and Yogi Bear, which still have pretty big staying power.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't necessarily have any commentary on that, but it is kind of weird.
Mm-hmm. Just an interesting tidbit about society and stuff,
Yeah.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that was fun. Let's move on.
Schoolhouse Rock.
Started in 1973 and apparently kept running until 2009 was the last new episode.
What?
Yeah, I was a little shocked by that too.
That is... What?
Yeah.
That is insane. I
Mhm.
thought this was only a 70s thing.
Yeah, so Schoolhouse Rock is a collection of songs that are meant to teach children things. A lot of things. Specifically
Math, science.
history, because it's aimed at American children, so it's American history.
Civics.
Things like that, talking about the government, like just trying to teach you things. And it, like, they would play one song in like the commercial block between shows and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is a show that's pretty influential because at least growing up, I knew a lot of older people who grew up with this show and still remembered these songs and still used these songs as a frame of reference for if they were trying to recall a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Like math or something like that. And
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
see, and I just know like little tidbits of the songs like that because I never watched the show or gave the show any time.
I'm just a bill. The thing is, I was shown a lot of these when I was growing up in school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had one or two teachers that are just like, yes, I love this stuff. Watch the one about the Civil War again.
See, and I had teachers who would just do what you just did, where they just say
Reference
one
it?
line of it and like,
Ha! And then move on.
yeah, and I'm just like, cool, I didn't learn anything from that.
Hello, I'm 12.
Please teach me. I do not know the pop culture reference from 30 years ago that you're making.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Honestly though,
Low quality,
feel
and
like
they tried their best.
I feel like Schoolhouse Rock sits pretty comfortably in the American propaganda machine.
Yeah, especially if you watch any of the history ones.
Yeah.
Or the ones about how the government works.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, wow, look how great our country is, and let's not talk about any of the bad things.
Which, like, you know, you understand it on a level where it's like, well, you're teaching this to kids. However, you're also perpetuating things that just straight aren't true.
Yeah.
And, you know, when it comes to the things like science and math, like, those things are fine. But it's the history
Mm-hmm.
and the civics and the government ones where you're just like, that really is not aged well.
Nope.
And has probably contributed to a lot of false information still going around to this day that people believe is historical fact that is not.
Yeah. Yeah, like we watched one, like we only watched a handful of these, and we watched the one on the Civil War, and I'm like,
Oof.
well, not the Civil War, the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
Sorry. Wrong
War.
war. The Revolutionary War was a mess. And this is just painting it in the nicest way possible.
Squeakiest clean. Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
Don't have much else to say about it other than that. So let's talk about the next Hanna-Barbera property we have that we watched. Might be a bit of an odd pick to some of you, but Super Friends.
Now, the reason we're covering Super Friends, like originally it's like, we need to cover some other American television show other than Scooby-Doo, and later we would add Fat Albert.
Mhm.
But it's like
And Schoolhouse Rock.
Scooby-Doo, and it was like, all right, superhero things are kind of starting up. Let's talk about the DC superhero friends.
Mhm.
Because it is the amalgamation and like, it is the quintessential version of superhero television
Of the time.
of the time.
Which
and
is
everything
crazy
else
because-
on the TV is a rerun of things from the 60s. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
It's all reruns of Hanna-Barbera. It's like looking up lists of the best shows from the 70s. I'm like, that's from the 60s, that's from the 60s, that's from the 50s, that's from the 60s. There, Scooby-Doo, kind of from the 70s, that's from the 60s. It's baffling to look at these lists and people just not understanding how a date works.
I mean,
But it's also true because it's what's popular.
it's what's popular. It makes you question, one, how, like, American animated TV ended up surviving this drought of content at all.
Mm-hmm.
But two, makes you totally understand why animation did almost completely die in the 70s in America.
Yeah, because this is if this is what's happening on TV, where it's just reruns of the same shit over and over again, and the same show slightly rebranded 17 times over.
Mm-hmm.
And then in movies, we're getting, like, Disney is dying, and there is no good replacement, and the only thing that's thriving right now is, like, Ralph Bakshi, but only kind of.
Only, in very niche circles. And in general, the popular conscious, like the zeitgeist of, how people felt about animation was like, you didn't want to be caught dead going to go see an animated film.
Mm-hmm. And, like, it makes sense. Unfortunately, because there's
Anyway,
nothing good here.
So, Super Friends.
Super Friends. It's a bunch of DC superheroes like Batman and Wonder Woman and Superman and Dick and Scooby-Doo, Shaggy, and Girl. Oh, and Aquaman's here too.
Yeah. This show is so lame.
It's incredibly lame.
It's like so lame.
Every episode was an hour long.
Yeah, that is
And
the
there
interesting.
is so much padding, and these only came out like once a month or less.
Okay, so yeah, there were 16 of these episodes made. They were an hour long, and they have about the same amount of content as a 20-minute show.
Yeah, they are so padded. We only watched one episode. It was the very first episode. I didn't look up an episode name because I don't care, but there's an alien that comes down and he starts stealing power from arbitrary things. Anything that has power in its name, he's stealing the energy from it. Like it's like the yes, and the thing and the stuff.
Uh-huh.
The power train and the powered
The dam.
the dam and the power company down the road, and like the last one he's going after is nuclear power.
Uh-huh.
And the bad guys stop him, and then he's like, I'm sorry, but my planet is bad at ecosystem and is dying, so I need to steal your guys' power. And so then the end of the episode is like, we'll help you, small alien man. And this is the conserve on energy.
Yeah, so then they end the episode with being like, everybody has a personal responsibility to help conserve energy. Make sure you turn off the lights when you leave a room, and good job. I'm just like, ooh.
Another one of these.
Oh boy. Personal individual responsibility is not enough to save our planet, 70s, but nice try, I guess.
It's just fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to really say about this other than
Aquaman is, like, while this show is super lame, Aquaman is the lamest of all.
and like they're trying to give each superhero their
Stuff
own
to
chance
do.
to shine and do a thing. Everyone in this show sucks except for Superman. Like, Batman and Robin can do diddly shit.
Diddly shit.
Aquaman gets attacked by sea creatures when he can control sea creatures.
Aquaman, Aquaman, like, looks for ways to make himself important.
Uh-huh.
Like, they're like, oh, well, we've got to go do this. And Aquaman's like, perfect. I'll go do something completely unrelated, but this will somehow help.
It's really dumb.
Yeah.
And Wonder Woman got just kind of regulated to flying around in her invisible jet most of the time and transporting the other superheroes around.
Even though, besides Superman, she's probably the most powerful one of them, easily.
Absolutely. But she's a girl, and they don't know how to write girl.
Uh-huh. And then the two kids and the dog do
Are-
diddly shit.
Yeah, they're like write-in characters of like the kids are supposed to see themselves as the Shaggy Scooby girls of this, because it's literally just the Hanna-Barbera Shaggy Scooby and random girl again.
Mm-hmm. I'm girl, says character.
I don't know who she is, but she's like the smart one because
Of course, she is girl.
yeah, she girl smart in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and God, can we just like have characters that are more diverse, please?
No. Anyway.
I don't know if we need to talk about American television anymore, but we should at least cover one more show.
Which, again, like I said, or hinted at the beginning of this episode, is a show that really should probably be covered for the 80s, because I feel like this show amplifies so much
It
of
changes
what...
anime forever.
Yeah.
It does. The same way Space Battleship Yamato changed anime forever, this took it the next step.
So I have Space Battleship Yamato and this show to blame for all the space operas we're going to be watching.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yep. I mean, that's the fascinating thing, is because this is less of a space opera and more of just like a space war show.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about Mobile Suit Gundam, in case you hadn't figured it out already. Started in 1979.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the change of the rules of how we're doing Animation Pilgrimage going forward, this show does get 3 compilation films that cover the entire first series, but we're not going to be watching compilation films going forward, so we need to talk about this show here and now. Otherwise, we'll never talk about it, and that would be a crime to animation.
Yeah, because, like, okay, I hadn't seen a lick of this show until we watched it for AP.
I've watched like a couple of like one of the offshoot reboots that came out in the 2010s, and I had no clue what was going on because they only spent time in the giant robots like maybe once every 3 episodes at that point.
Okay. But I hadn't seen any of this. I just knew Gundam was big. And I didn't even know Gundam came from this. I thought Gundam was just what was referred to as giant robot anime, which it's both.
I mean, it's both. I don't know if it was the first. Oh, it's not the first giant robot anime, but it is
No.
the first one that was like really tried to take its science seriously.
Yeah.
To like even a further extent than like Yamato, where it's supposed to be super dramatic. This is no, let's do giant robots, but actually try to ground this in some level of science and realism. Even more so, and
even though it
doesn't get
still
everything.
has silly elements.
Yeah, it doesn't
to
get everything correct, and like.
But it took a lot more steps to make it more realistic, and I gotta say, I was super impressed with the episodes we watched of this.
Because we only we recorded 2 episodes of this, of us watching this, and then we went on and watched like another 2 or 3 afterwards, and like the show just keeps being good. And obviously that's like the first 4 episodes or so out of an entire series of 26 episodes or something. It could go down in quality, but from the staggering number of like so many shows and movies and
how big the franchise.
The franchise is egregiously large, almost the size of a giant robot, one would say. In fact, there is a giant Gundam statue in Japan that can actually move.
That's sick.
That's really sick. That's what kind of imprint this show has left on anime and animation in general. Other things I know about this is like the guy that wrote this, it's also a political
course it is.
It's a political story about old versus
you can't
new.
make art without it being political, but like, of course this is political.
It's old versus new. It's about kids being bossed around by obtuse adults and just getting caught into their bullshit. And like, that's the plot of like the entire original series. Because it's a bunch of kids having to fight the adults' war.
Yeah, this was really good. So interesting thing about this show, though, is that it initially had really low ratings, and it was almost canceled.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But then when it started to get reruns, the show became insanely popular, which allowed it to continue.
Okay.
Yeah. It took inspiration from Starship Troopers and Space Battleship Yamato, which isn't surprising. And then, yeah, it spawned the legacy that it has now. But
giant robot anime going forward looked at this show.
Right.
It's like, you don't go back and look at, I don't know, Mazinger Z or, I don't know, other things like that. You look at Gundam, first and foremost, if you're trying to make a giant robot anime.
Well, and I think there's probably another show that'll come after this that kind of reinvented the wheel when it comes to Gundam, as far as what I've heard.
Evangelion?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that won't be until late 90s.
Yeah.
So
this sets the precedent for a
the next
long time.
10 and a half years or so. And, I mean, Evangelion was made by someone who grew up watching this, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, it's the next step in that sort of show.
And, of course, as we've already mentioned, this spawned so many copycats. Some we've already seen on Animation Pilgrimage.
Yeah, like...
Johnny Destiny, Space Ranger.
Yeah, just takes the villain's design and just makes it the main character for no reason.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
But there's so many elements about this TV show that feel very 80s. Gundams in general feel very 80s. The way the show is paced and is actually telling a story
that
rather than being just like an episodic format of, you know, singular monster of the week conflicts.
Yeah.
It's like each episode progresses directly from where the last one left off.
Yeah.
It has a very early rudimentary kind of like previously on segment.
Yeah.
And where that is really only regulated to giving you like the basic core of what you need to know about what's going on in the world. It's still like a stepping stone that we've not seen so far.
Yeah, I guess Space Battleship Yamato obviously was also a television series that came out in the 70s. We're not covering it here because we've watched the compilation films, so like definitely watch those. But that is, of course, another very influential show from the 70s. I realized we hadn't really brought that up, but like if you've been watching Animation Pilgrimage as it comes out, we have 2.5 to 3 episodes on that now.
Yeah.
So like, don't worry, we've talked about it.
We've
It's
covered
great.
it.
I love it.
Don't love that I have a million space operas to look forward to. They're all like 3 hours long.
Hooray!
And probably nowhere near as good.
Oh, you don't even know. We have at least 3 next year.
Sean.
God, help us all.
Anyway, I think that's it for TV.
Yeah. Obviously, if you feel like there were shows that we missed and you have information about why they were good or important or anything about them, talk about it in the comments.
Yeah, if you
like,
grew
I would
up with
love to
70s
know.
TV, like I especially want to hear your opinion because I love hearing from the perspective of people who experienced that at the time that it was in the culture.
Yeah.
You know, I love hearing stories about, like, what people thought, what people's feelings were after, you know, seeing or experiencing a piece of media for the first time. Because opinion changes over time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we have a very different outlook on a lot of things. And we've had a number of commenters that are like, man, I remember going to see this movie in theaters and, like, it was such an experience for me and stuff. And I love those comments. Yeah,
I love them too, especially for stuff that is this old now because we don't have the internet.
Yeah.
There's very little at this time period that would let fandoms form. So getting that voice out there of like how people felt at the time that this was released, I think is so important because otherwise, it's kind of just lost history. We just have, you know, like, oh, you know, maybe he said, she said about this, which is kind of what we're encouraging in the comments too. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool. Anyway.
I think that's going to be it for this episode.
So next time,
we're not done with the 70s. You might be thinking, wait, but you've covered all of the 70s. And you're right. Now we need to cover all of the 70s.
All of it.
We're going to do one final Lizard and Cat retrospective over the entire 70s.
This was highly requested after we finished the 60s.
Yeah. People want us to look at the entire decade as a whole and decide what was the actually best movies and the worst. I don't know if we're going to be able to get deeper than that. Maybe we'll talk about general themes we saw over the course of the 70s and stuff like that. But like,
yeah.
We're going to do a full look at the 70s. God, I don't remember any of the movies we watched in the 70s. I need to go watch our old episodes to know what we watched.
And how we felt about them.
Yeah.
He's like, I know I look back at Animation Pilgrimage thumbnails sometimes and I'm like, oh yeah, we watched that.
What was that?
What was that?
Oh, that's good. All right. See you guys then.
Bye-bye.